Okay. Hi, everybody. It's just about 12:30, so I thought we would get started. My name is Kristen Body. I am the Membership and Museum Events Manager at the Asheville Art Museum, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. Today's program is being led by our Associate Curator Cindy Buckner and a special guest, collector and author Bill Steiner. So thank you both for being here and talking about a telling instinct. Before I turn this over to you, I just want to go over some housekeeping for our attendees. So microphones and video are turned off by default. You should all know that we are recording today's program, so if you do not want to be recorded, please make sure that your video and microphone remain off. You can confirm this by looking in the bottom left corner. You should see a red line through your microphone and video symbols. Next, you do have two options for asking questions or making comments. The first is to type your question or comment into the chat box. Cindy and Bill will read this when they get to a good stopping point, and I do encourage you to put your questions in the chat box as we go. The second option is to use the raise hand feature, which you can find by clicking the participants button at the bottom of the screen. And when you do this, when we get to a good stopping point, I will call on whoever has their hand raised, unmute you, and you can get started. And finally, if you feel there's anything we can do to improve the Zoom format for these member programs or other programs, please do let us know. Your advice so far has been incredibly helpful, and we really appreciate your feedback. So now I'll turn this over to Cindy and Bill. Thanks so much.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm going to be speaking first, and then Bill is going to take over for the second half. I'll be speaking for about 20 minutes about our exhibition at the Asheville Art Museum, A Telling Instinct, John James Audubon, and Contemporary Art. Now I think you can go to, thank you. This exhibition has been planned for 1.5 years to 2 years out. And it did open in late February. It will be on view when the museum reopens, assuming we're able to reopen during the next couple of months. We have extended all the loans to make sure that that will happen. My volume is too low. Is this better? The exhibition came about because Bill Steiner, who is a local collector and author, as Kristen mentioned, has a very, very large collection of Audubon prints. And he has one of the largest collections held privately, but he's also been researching this for a long time. And that's why we thought it was so important to have him be able to talk to you directly. So when he came to us and said that he would like to make his collection available for exhibition, we thought that was because 19th century American art, so much what we do at the Asheville Art Museum, fit together in an exhibition that made sense for us as an institution. So we decided to bring on another curator by the name of Marilyn Laufer. She is the Director Emerita of the Jewel Collins Smith Museum at Auburn University, and she had moved to Asheville a couple of years ago to retire. And she had some expertise on Audubon. She had organized Audubon exhibitions and a publication previously at her institution. So she and I co-curated this exhibition together. This is really a lot of Marilyn's idea, thank you. Kristen, you're reading my mind, is to have contemporary artists Audubon prints. We know that many artists today are working with animal imagery, and a lot of artists are inspired directly by Audubon. So here on the left, you see a detail of a work that's in the exhibition by Adana Hare, and on the right, a print that is in the exhibition by Audubon. So kind of giving you a little taste of the kind of pairings that you'll see in the exhibition. Now, besides just having animal imagery, we wanted to have a further theme. And Marilyn brought up the very good point You can go back to the previous slide, thanks. Marilyn brought up the very good point that John James Audubon was really influenced by storytelling. When he went out on his trips to document birds and animals in the American landscape, he brought with him a copy of La Fontaine's Fables. And that's a 17th century French author, and it's typically called the Fables of Fontaine. That's typically how it's worded. But he was looking back to Aesop's fables, and he kind of converted them into French into a verse form. So these are fables told in terms of animals. So like human morality tales about, doing the right thing, or human instincts told in story form. And that Audubon was doing that in his imagery as well. He was a naturalist. He was documenting the birds and the quadrupeds in North America, but he wasn't doing it in a scientific way. He was showing them in their native environments, and he was showing their behavior. So like with the white heron, you could see the bird is kind of going after a frog or a toad in the lower left, and it's showing him in the kind of muddy flats in the environment that he lived. So the idea was, why would Audubon want to be telling stories with his imagery? And well, part of the reason is it makes us more empathetic with the animals. It clues us into their behavior, then it kind of suggests, well, how is this related to our behavior? So everything in the exhibition is either focused on images of storytelling through animals, or images of animals that have human characteristics, human expressions, is kind of anthropomorphizing the animals. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So I'm kind of going along in the order that the exhibition flows. This is the first thing you see. I'm not showing every single piece in the exhibition, but giving you most of them in a good sampling. So this is a print by Walton Ford. He is a New York artist who is one of the most influenced by Audubon of everyone in the show, and we really had to work hard to get a work by Walton Ford for the exhibition. He's very sought after. And this is a loan from Jewel Collins Smith Museum of Fine Art. I was going to mention before I got to this point, there's only 4 pieces in the show that are from the Asheville Art Museum's collection. The rest are loans. And there are 42 pieces total, both contemporary and Audubon. So this work by Walton Ford, you can see there's a hummingbird. And at first you just think, oh, this is nice little imagery of hummingbirds in flowers. But it's called limed blossoms. And what limed blossoms means is that's how you can capture hummingbirds, by poisoning the blossoms with a sticky wheat paste where they get stuck. And so you're basically killing the hummingbirds by doing this. And if you think about it, if you want to document a hummingbird, you can't really shoot it. Even if you manage to shoot it, then you're going to completely decimate the bird. So this could have been one way that Audubon could have captured some hummingbirds to be able to document them. But Walton Ford often looks at uses animal imagery to talk about the social commentary on the negative aspects of humanity, particularly human oppression. So his works are often kind of dark like this, have a dark quality. You can go to the next one. So we have 2 works in the exhibition by Adana Care. This is the second one in the exhibition. It's called 2 Lions. Adana is a Burbank, California artist. And she works in carbon pencil on paper, and she works both small and large, but both pieces in the exhibition are very large. You can see this one is 7 feet tall. And I include, so you can kind of get a sense of the overall composition here. It is mirrored from top to bottom, but not symmetrical. It has the same animals and composition oriented up and down. And she doesn't have the preferred orientation. At the museum, the way it is now, it's the orientation that you see with the kind of, there's jellyfish up here in the top and all sorts of animals like connected and living here together. Kind of a peaceable kingdom motif, if you know that from the 19th century, where all the animals are living together peacefully. But if you could go to the next slide. It also works upside down so that now you can see the birds here at the top. And I pulled out a detail so that you could see what these little animals look like. So here you have a polar bear in the center and a two-headed snake on the left. Below that's a bat. To the right is a giraffe wearing a collar. And so you could see that they're not all, you know, at the correct proportion to each other. They're kind of metaphors. And her art is focused on telling stories of basically her life and her way of thinking in terms of animals. It's not about the animals themselves, although she loves animals. She will have a program tomorrow night for those of you who are able to join Cocktails and Coloring, where I will be talking with her about her art, and then we'll have a coloring session because she has a coloring book that she has published, and that's tomorrow evening. So, and Adana talks a lot about the animals having connections, and sometimes you'll see strings connecting them, and that is interpreted as we're all connected as humans and beings on the planet. Sometimes we're connected in ways that we appreciate, and sometimes it's connections that we don't appreciate. We're connected to people who don't have our best interests at heart, or who just who irritate us, or it's just kind of the everyday connections and relationships we have with each other. Okay, we'll go to the next one. This is a large painting by Bo Bartlett called Dominion, and Bo is based in Columbus, Georgia, as well as in Maine. This was painted in Maine, and he issued a statement recently about this on his gallery about this painting. Bartlett lives on an island in Maine, and he was talking about how they kind of own the island, but they're really only stewards of the island. So the island is their domain, their dominion, but they're just stewards. And the idea that humankind has dominion over the earth, well, the word dominion could be translated differently. In the Hebrew, it's Radah, R-A-D-A-H, which really means reign, to reign over. But if we thought of Radah as stewardship, then that would be a better way to interact with the planet. So you see here, there's a polar bear on a very, very small iceberg. So of course that makes you think of global warming and the fact that the polar bears are losing their environment. But you also notice on his belly, there's a small red wound, a bloody wound. So it's not just his environment, but it's also probably a direct gunshot or harpoon wound, or it could even be from another animal, we don't know. And the more you look at it, the stranger the polar bear starts to look. His face is not a normal polar bear face. The eyes are really orange, which I know is a little hard to see, but I think he's making the polar bear's face look much more human, to kind of bring out the point of we're all in this together. It's not just all of us at home together, but it's all the animals on the planet, all the creatures on the planet together. We have to come up with a way to live together peacefully. Okay, next. Here we have photographs by Evan Kafka. Evan lives in Asheville. He works as a professional photographer, both commercially and fine art. This is from his Trophies series. So you have a pig, a baby goat, and a rabbit. And they all kind of have their own personalities. the way that he's chosen to frame them, it really brings out the aspect of taxidermied heads, but they are live animals that he shoots in his studio. There is a white cloth that he has a hole cut in, and then the hooks the animal's head through to get this effect of a trophy taxidermy animal on a wall. But he really captures a lot of their expressions and personalities that really kind of either you want to make a story around, or you kind of attribute their own personalities to. The pig at the top, particularly, when I was able to do tours in the exhibition itself before we closed, people really had different ideas about what that expression was. Some people thought that she was laughing, and I do know it's a female pig, and some thought that she was scared. The goat at the lower right, some people thought that he was smirking. Some people thought that he was angry. What is a pigment print? That's a type of photographic print. So it starts with he starts with a digital image, and then he prints it out on a printer, basically, that uses archival pigments. So it's a different kind of photography print. Okay, so let's go to the next. Joel Sartori. This is work in our collection. We actually purchased this for the exhibition. Joel Sartori is a Nebraska artist, and he works for National Geographic a lot of times, and his overall project is called the Photo Arc, and that is to document all the species of animals in the world, but particularly those that are endangered. So the one that you see here is a vulnerable female Bengal slow loris, and he also captures animals in his studio, but also in zoos. So this one is actually at a zoo, and provides either a black backdrop or a white backdrop, so that we're focusing just on the animal's pose and behavior. And Marilyn and I picked two from his website that we thought had the most aspect of storytelling or human expression. So I thought this one was both kind of funny at one time, because it's showing its back to us and kind of looking around over its shoulder, but then its eyes have just such a cautious and almost fearful expression. So the comment says, I think the PBS NewsHour did an interview with him recently. That is extremely possible. He is in the news quite a bit. Let's see. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So Lori Hogan lives in Urbana, Illinois, and she does these fantastical oil paintings of birds and imaginary animals in landscapes. And she does custom-made frames. She makes the frames that go with them to kind of have an overall work of art. Her work is kind of paradoxical, because she uses this really almost photorealistic painting technique, but the animals are completely imaginary. You can see this one has really wild coloring. And I'm not sure if I had the one next, Kristen had a detail pulled out. Yeah. So if I had been in the museum, I would have been able to get you a really good detail showing the brush strokes, but as I'm not, we'll have to do with this. So she uses this kind of really old master technique of finely detailed painting, but these fantastical imaginary animals that are living in a world that suggests either a poisoned environment, like they have, their environment has gone completely askew. It's not natural in any way. And she also refers to the kind of 21st century consumerism and advertising as a point of inspiration for her kind of artificiality of her imagery. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, Michelle Dorff says, do you know the significance of the angels and hands on the frame? I believe the other frame has devil or skulls on it. I didn't ask her about that. I felt like it was just another element of the kind of artificiality and kind of garish consumerism that she talks about, particularly with the hands coming in from the outside. I don't know, I'd have to ask her. Okay, can go to the next work. So this is Kate McDowell. She is in Portland, Oregon. And this is porcelain birds, and these are multiple individual pieces of porcelain that hang on the wall. And it's called Feather Trade Carolina Parakeets. Kate is someone who works regularly with animal imagery in her porcelain sculptures. These particular, if you go to the next slide, are parakeets, Carolina parakeets with human hands. So the Carolina parakeet went extinct in 1918, and that was as a result of overhunting. They did not die, go peacefully. They were kind of pest birds that would have come and invade farmers' flocks and just decimate their crops. There were so many of them. But that was one reason. The other reason they were hunted is their feathers were especially prized for fashion. So their feathers were cultivated for women's hats, and sometimes even whole birds were included on hats. And so her imagery of the human hands is reflecting that fact that humans kind of took them over and decimated them by our own greed. And if you go to the next one, this is one case where the same bird, the same animal is addressed by a contemporary artist and Audubon. So this is a chromolithograph of Carolina parakeets. This is the only Audubon print in the show that does not come from Bill Steiner's collection. I'm sure he would love to have one, but this comes from his friend, Dr. Reed Taylor. So another briefing, and I know Bill's going to talk about this image as well. So just wanted to give you a sense of what that looks like. So we have two works by Anne Lemansky in the exhibition. This is Deregulator, and Anne Lemansky is in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, and this is the work from our collection. Deregulator shows an eagle, which symbolizes the nation in 2008 when we had the financial collapse, and the nation is, or the government is smashing Joe Pigeon, who is the blue collar worker. So that's Joe Pigeon underneath his claw, and in front of him is Nick the Pigeon, a second blue collar worker who's going to be getting it next. So there are people who have been decimated by the financial collapse, and the bird itself is, the eagle is, his feathers, his body is made from $1 billion bills, play money. And works in this mode regularly. She's kind of perfected this of having she builds a copper armature underneath this in the shape of the animal, and then overlays onto it paper or fabric that she prints. And if you go to the next one, is a second example of her work. This is on loan from the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art. And this is very large. You can see this is over 5 feet tall. In this case, she built the armature for the tiger, and then the paper that goes over it is a print that she created on her scanner. And I'm sorry I didn't include a detail of this one. The pattern that you see is made up of plastic straws. And she had a bunch of these bubble tea straws, so they're kind of really thick straws in different colors that she just threw down onto her scanner and made a scanned image from, and then worked with it until she got the right kind of pattern to apply to these pieces of paper all over the body. And the different patterns are kind of evoke different cultures throughout the world, whether it be South American or Asian. And of course, the whole theme of a tiger on a ball makes you think of the precariousness of certain animal species on Earth. The ball kind of looks like a beach ball, but it's meant to be an exercise ball like they use in a circus. And the ball is made of plastic and it's weighted with concrete. And so it's really a feat of engineering. The bottom of it is, it's not completely round, of course, because then it would just roll over, but it's a very, very small flat area on the bottom. And to be able to get it all weighted and the proportion of it correctly was just really, really impressive. Okay, I need to hurry up a little bit, I think. So the next one is Beth Kavanagh. She is based in Helena, Montana. And this is a stoneware piece about a foot high. And it's called Your Eyes Have Their Silence. That's Chris Whitten says he loves this piece. So people have very strong reactions to this piece. People love it and some people hate it. They find it very, very disturbing. And you can understand because there are sticks in the little rat's eyes. And now the phrase, your eyes have their silence, comes from a poem by E.E. Cummings. And so I just find it evocative of kind of humans not being able to interact correctly with their environment. Like, sure, like, okay, the rat has sticks in its eyes, but why hasn't he pulled them out? You know, it's like this existential crisis that this rat is in. Okay, next. Slightly more happy work is Mark Messersmith, Progress of the Wading. He is a Tallahassee artist, and he uses animal imagery very directly to talk about how animals are having to kind of adapt themselves to our human intervention, and particularly animals in Tallahassee. And this is oil on canvas with painted wood additions. So the dog you see at the bottom is freestanding, and it connects with a ladder up to the top where you have some more carved wood elements. A lot of animals all put there together somewhat in the way that Adana does, but in a much more naturalistic manner. And there are 2 pieces by Mark Messersmith in the show, and he very graciously agreed to give us a 3rd. So we do now have a piece by him in the collection that we look forward to showing soon. Okay, William Beckman is a Minnesota-born artist. He was raised on a farm where he worked around horses and bulls and also worked for weekly rodeos. So later in his career, around 2008, he revisited this kind of imagery and make individual portraits of bulls and horses. And this is from 2010, loaned from the Columbus Museum. And you can see this is over 9 feet tall. And he has a really kind of ambiguous expression. Some people think he's about to charge. Some people think he's feeling a little vulnerable with his kind of 1 foot held back. So again, it's open to our interpretation. And the next one. And this is the last one I'm going to talk about before I hand it over to Bill. So this is Adana Hare Pool Party, and this is 17 feet wide. She works on her drawings on the walls of her studio, and she works, and she doesn't pre-plan her compositions. She kind of starts with one grouping, and then as ideas come to her, she brings them all together. And one idea behind this was kind of a post-apocalyptic environment where all the animals have to come together and figure out how to live together. So tigers and zebras in reality live on different continents. They don't mix in nature. So this would be a whole new way of for them to coexist. And of course, they're utilizing strange human objects such as beach balls and pool noodles, and the tigers and the birds are kind of pulling the zebra's stripes off. What is on his face? Oh, that's just his coloring, his markings. He doesn't have anything on his face. Thank you, Kristen, for figuring out what that was. So again, if you're able to attend the Zoom event tomorrow night with Adana, you can ask her more about this work. So I'm going to hand it over to Bill at this point.
I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Can we have the first slide? Okay, that's me and that's my wife, and that's what I've been spending my money on for the last 25 years. Kind of an Audubon fanatic. Want to draw your attention to the left side of your screen, to the upper row, and those are all bird prints from John James Audubon's Birds of America. The interesting thing about them is that they're all painted in their full life size, and Audubon had them printed in their full life sized. So the first one you see on the left side of your screen is Black Vulture getting ready to chew on a dead deer's head, and that's how big a black vulture is. The row underneath them, you can see the pronghorn the bighorn sheep, and then pronghorn antelope, and then one of the flying squirrels. John James Audubon also did mammal prints, and I'm very gratified that Cindy wanted to include many of the mammal prints in the exhibit. Many people don't realize that Audubon did both birds and mammals. Don't want to go into a brief biography. We don't have the time. I will say that through his life, Audubon was born wealthy, then he experienced poverty, and then when he became famous as a bird artist, he got wealthy again, and money was kind of an obsession of his all of his life. And I will talk a bit about money and what these prints sell for today as we go through, just to give you a reference. Can we have the second slide? When Audubon went to England in 1826 to have his work printed, nobody had ever seen anything quite like his images before. All bird painting prior to that had been pretty much animals standing in stiff profile, and Audubon gave them movement, gave them action. If you've ever seen a bunch of baby turkeys running around their mother, that's exactly what they look like. They tumble over each other. They're preening their feathers, and you can almost feel the movement in this print. This was print number 6 out of the entire set, and today that's about $110,000, $130,000, something like that. Can we have the next one? Carolina Parrot, full life size again. The paper measured about 26 by 39, bigger than 2 feet by 3 feet. And when you bought a subscription to this work, when you bought the Birds of America from Audubon, you would get the prints in groups of 5. And one of them would be this size, Carolina Parrot. It would almost cover the entire huge page. The image would be just very, very slightly smaller than the page itself. We'll come back to Carolina Parrot later on. Can we go to the next one? This is Chuck Will's widow. It's a relative of the whippoorwill. They're quite common down on the coastal plain of North Carolina. This image is a little bit smaller. It's about 20 by 24, but still printed on the same huge sheet of paper, the same 26 by 39 paper. And then you would get a small one, and these were called mediums, the ones that were slightly smaller. And then the next three of the group of five that you would get were smaller. And can we go to the next one? This is American Goldfinch, and the image is about 12 by 20, once again on the same huge sheet of paper. Can we go to the next one? Long-eared owl. Sometimes the bird was fairly decent sized, but if it wasn't much bigger than 12 by 20, Audubon would make it a small print. Can we go to the next one? American Widgeon, full sheet. Once again, the image is about 12 by 20. So when you bought a subscription to the Birds of America from Audubon, it was delivered in groups of 5 over a 13-year period. The total cost was $870. There were 435 prints that cost $2 a piece. And every month or so, a courier would show up at your door with a sealed tin box with 1 large, 1 medium, and 3 small prints. Have the next one. This is what a full-sized volume looks like. Once again, we have Wild Turkey. This is the first print in the entire folio, and that's how big the volumes were. And in 1840s America and in 1840s England, if you owned a complete set, you were cool. You were a neat person. I have a question here. What kind of ink paint was used to print the book? I'll get to that in a minute. Give me another 5 minutes and we'll get there. A complete set today will sell for around $5 million, $10 million, as much as $15 million, depending upon the condition, depending upon if there's any unique provenance to the set. Some of these, very briefly, Audubon printed about 185 complete sets. 121 are still intact today. 10 of them were lost in war or in fires, and 42 we know have been broken up and sold as individual prints, almost all of them in America and almost all of them between 1920 and 1989. And that's where all the loose prints come from that are on the market today. If a set got broken up back in the 1800s and the prints were displayed, the framing practices back then were so bad that those prints didn't survive. So if you own an original Audubon print, and Peg and I own about 45 of them, each one of them is about 1 out of 40. It's pretty much the ultimate in a limited edition. There have been 12 sets that were just lost to history. And you add all that up together and you get 185. Along the way, there's some extremely iconic images that became kind of enduring pieces of American art. I'm going to show you the next one. Some bald eagle, and he's feasting on a hapless catfish. You'll see this one reproduced in a lot of broadsides, political advertisements that were used in presidential campaigns in the 1800s. Wouldn't have a dead catfish, he'd be sitting on an American flag or something. But this was a really, really, really common image that was used in the 1800s. One more. Blue jay. three blue jays attacking the nest of another bird, an exquisite print. This one would sell today for around $35,000, $40,000. And no, I don't own one. I wish I did. Audubon was one of the most famous Americans we had back in the 1800s. Towards the end of that century, he began to fall out of favor. He began to be forgotten. But in around 1965, 1970, he was kind of rediscovered. Robert Hughes was the art critic for a long time for the New York Times, and he considered Audubon to be one of the three great artists produced by America in the entire 1800s, the other two being Winslow Homer and James McNeill Whistler. Now can we go to the next one? This is a detail from a print that I own that was made in 2002. The original copper plate for this still exists. And about 80 of the copper plates are still around. This is a restrike, a new print that was pulled from that copper plate. And if you look at the bill of the bird, just before its eyes, you can see some scratches that ended up in the copper plate while it was being stored for 100 or so years. They were printed in black ink, and can we go to the next one? Then they were hand colored. There was an army of colorists in the printing shop in England. The printer was Robert Havell. And back then they had guilds, they had unions, and you had masters and apprentices and journeymen. They used etching and aquatint. I would explain what etching and aquatint, how it worked on the copper plate, but I would put everybody to sleep. I don't want to do that. But they were printed in black ink, then they were hand colored, and that makes every single print a little bit different. They made mistakes. Some of them were exquisite. Some of them weren't done that well. All of them are beautiful. Okay. Can we go to the next one? All right. This is print number 43. This is Cerulean Warbler. This one you'll see way up on the Blue Ridge Parkway this time of the year beginning to breed. And this is what the print should look like. This is, you can see the American Beautyberry behind it, nice and pretty and purple. And this is what happens when somebody buys a print like this and frames it poorly. Can we have the next one? This is what happens. If this was a pristine print and it was framed nicely and hanging in a gallery in Georgetown, somebody would be looking to pay around $3,000 or $4,000 for it. This one was framed badly. It was water stained. It was hung in sunlight, which blasted out the color in the berries and in the leaves and in the bird. And my friend, Dr. Taylor, the gentleman who owns the Carolina Parrot print in the exhibit, my friend Dr. Taylor got this one for $120 off eBay. This is an original Birds of America print from the early 1800s, and because it was treated so badly, its value is just about shot. Earlier I said that the Audubon prints that are out there on the market today, there's maybe 40 copies of each image. Unfortunately, many of them were treated this way, and they've undoubtedly been thrown away. So the real number is probably significantly less than 40. Okay, moving on. When Audubon finished printing the Birds of America, he started in 1826, he finished in 1839, came back to New York City in 1839, and he realized there was a market for a smaller version of his Birds of America. And he and his two sons worked with a printer in Philadelphia and one in New York. And can we go to the next one? They began to print a number of sets, complete sets of the Birds of America in a much smaller size. Once again, these were black ink, this time lithographs, but they were all still hand colored. This is Louisiana Heron, and the print measures about 7 by 10. Now, earlier in the program, Cindy talked about an artist named Mark Messersmith, and the next print is a tiny little detail from one of the paintings in the exhibit. And can we have the next one? And if you look at the page that's hanging loose at the bottom there, just below the little glass jar, you can see that same image of the Louisiana Heron. Mark copied Audubon, and he was obviously influenced by him. Like I'm kind of happy about that, and I really like Mark's work. I've got a question here from Michelle. I said lithograph, Lithograph. Any kind of a paper print that's printed with a stone, a limestone matrix to use to hold the ink. I could talk about it for 5 minutes, but we don't really have the time. Can we move on? Next one. Once again, from the Octavo Birds of America, barn owl print, and you can see the little chipmunk there that the barn owls have caught getting ready to eat. Audubon painted mammals along the way, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Next one. This is a Chestnut Titmouse. It's a one of the northern chickadees. Today it's called a chickadee. This one breeds up in Canada. This is an honest-to-God original 1856 version, hand-colored, genuine Audubon print. And you can pick up one of these off eBay for $10 or $15. I kind of like the library stamp that you can see at the lower right. To me, that adds a little bit of charm to the print. I don't think it detracts from it at all. This used to be owned by a public library. It was out on the shelves, and now somebody bought that set and then broke them up and sold the individual prints. Next one. Same thing here. This is Pectoral Sandpiper. These show up in Asheville every spring on some of the golf courses and in the sod farms down in Hendersonville. This is, once again, black ink, hand-colored, original, $5, $10. Next one. Once again, an octavo. This is a more iconic image. People like to buy the herons. Same size, 7 by 10, but this one would sell for about $1,500. Collectors are kind of strange. Okay, now we're going to move on to Audubon's mammals. This is what one of the open volumes look like. The prints measured 22 by 28. Audubon could not paint the mammals full size because there isn't any paper quite big enough to contain a moose or a mountain lion. They chose the size 20 by 28. Standard folio paper back then was about 14 by 20, 15 by 21. This was bigger, so Audubon, being a very good salesman, coined a term, and he called it imperial folio. Next one. This is a title page. And if you look down here, you can see it says John James Audubon, and then underneath it, the Reverend John Bachman. Bachman was a Lutheran minister from Charleston, and he happened to be the best mammal scientist in North America at the time. Audubon knew everything about birds, but he was a little bit sketchy on the mammals. So he teamed up with the Reverend Bachman to get things straight, to label things right, and to write the text. And Audubon had two sons, Victor Audubon, and then Audubon's second son was John Woodhouse Audubon. Those two sons married two of Bachman's daughters. Yeah, let's go to the next one. This is mink. This one has not been colored. The uncolored mink prints are almost impossible to find. There's a story behind this one. I won't go into it now. This is what it looked like coming off the printing press. Can we have the next one? This is what it looked like after the same print was hand colored. And the next one. This is Ocelot. Next one. Black fox. This one was actually done by Audubon's son, John Woodhouse. And it's one of the best ones in the entire folio. It sells for around $20,000 these days. And I don't own one of these either. The next one. This is one of the ground squirrels from out west. These can be had relatively inexpensively. Next one. Armadillo. I do have one of these, and I like it very much. This was printed and painted in 1845. By that time, Audubon, his mental faculties were beginning to fade. This was entirely by his two sons. Victor did the background. John Woodhouse did the armadillo. The plant in the background, they looked for some kind of plant that was a desert type plant, and the one they happened to choose was South African. That's an aloe plant back there, Aloe mitriformis, and they made a few mistakes like this as they went along. After they finished making these huge mammal prints, these 22 by 28 mammal prints, they also did a smaller version because there was a market for that. We have the next one. 7 inches by 10 inches. This was the octavo mammals, printed from 1850 to 1854. One more. Little harvest mouse. I've always liked this one and never been able to find one that was in decent shape to buy. I like that corn cob. And in more or less conclusion here, Audubon and his two sons created 4 major works and 1 minor work. The major work included big birds. Let's have the next one. Roseate Spoonbill. Next one, Longtailed Duck, and I do own one of those. They did big birds, they did little birds, the octavo birds. One more, American Puffin. One more, the eagle print. And on this eagle print, if you look at the vertical lines in the image, that's the text on the back of the facing page that has bled through the paper over time. Next one. They did big mammals. This is one of the squirrels. Next one. Northern hare. Then they did the little mammals. Next. Elk, 7 by 10. Next. American shrew, 7 by 10, extremely inexpensive. And finally, in 1860, They Audubon had passed away by then. Yeah, go to the next one, the ibis. And Audubon's two sons took the images to Chicago, and they used chronolithography to try to make another complete set of the big American birds. The Civil War got in the way, and they only finished 160 of the prints, but they're still pretty cool looking. Can we have the next one? There are two excellent biographies written about by Audubon in the last few years. Both of them in 2005. This one by Richard Rhodes, next. And this one by William Souter. Now, can we go back? I like that one better of the two. They're both very, very good books. They're both compelling reads. I like the one by Rhodes better because I edited that book. Okay, can we go to the next one? That's Souter. And there was another excellent book written by Audubon in 2003, and that one's by me. That's the definitive book about Audubon prints. And with that, I'll draw to a close with one offer. If any of you own any natural history prints, Audubon prints, I'd love to see them. I'd love to look at them. And when this quarantine lifts, you can contact me through the museum, come over, look at my gallery, and we'll drink some cheap wine. We have one question down here. How did he capture the images? There wasn't any photography back then. Audubon would shoot the bird. He would mount it on a board, pin it in a lifelike position, and then measure carefully and do a pencil sketch. Then he would ink that in and then paint it. Anybody else?
All right, if there are no other questions, or if you have questions later, please feel free to send them to me or Cindy. We can pass them along to Bill if necessary. Thank you both for leading this presentation today. Bill, your passion for Audubon is very apparent, and I look forward to reading this book at some point. That was really great, and thank you again to our members for joining today. I'll be in touch later today with a program evaluation form for you to fill out so we can just get your feedback on how we're doing. And just a reminder, we're scheduling these programs every week, so be on a lookout for an email from me every Monday to tell you what we have going on that week. So thank you again. I hope you all stay well and healthy. And I hope I see you again next week and hopefully in person soon. All right, thank you again, and thank you, Bill and Cindy.
All right.
Bye. Thank you.